problem. Amanda couldn't make it today, so she asked me to step in like an hour ago. And so I'm here. I'm Stephanie Minnich. I've met a couple of you, like Grady. I know we've been on some classes. Tom, I've met. Charlie, let's see. Amy, nice to see you. We've got a couple other people without video. I'm one of the launch coaches. If you ever call the hotline or the helpline, you might hear my voice. Otherwise, it's Andy. Hopefully you can tell the difference between our voices. Anyway, I'm here to just kind of chat with you today. Might be a little shorter because I don't have anything prepared at the moment since I'm kind of on the fly. So I thought we'd kind of open it up. Oh, and then Benji's here too.
Hey guys.
Who we're on the same team. So he's just kind of here in the office. So I thought I'd just kind of check in with you guys to see how is it going and if there's anything pressing in your business that we can talk about, and maybe kind of do like a mastermind, what you're seeing out in the market, what's going on with your clients, and we can talk about kind of what we're seeing too. So does anyone have anything that they came to the time today to talk about or have questions? Quiet group. Nothing?
Well, I guess, I mean, and I mean, this is a broad question, but with how have you been approaching writing offers in this type of market? I mean, everybody, has had, everybody, has their own explanations, certain contingencies that they, have waived, just how have you been approaching it?
Okay. So let's talk about that from a buyer's perspective then. So I work with a lot of buyers. I probably work more like 70% buyers, 30% sellers. So I'm totally right out there with you, kind of like in the trenches. It feels like the Wild West right now, right? So have you guys all written offers competitively so far this year? Nothing yet? Yes? Okay. Amy, are you newer? I think you're.
Yeah, I'm brand new, and like right now I'm working on homework assignment from Joan where she wants me to go on MLS, find an active listing, and then work through zip forms, which is kind of challenging the first time around because I don't really know how zip forms works. But Betsy has given me some YouTube videos that I need to go and take a look at. So I'm very early in the process. I'm working with Carla, so I am kind of learning as we go, but they're her listings at this point.
Got it. Great. And that YouTube channel is awesome. There are videos on zip forms that'll just like walk you through it, like you can see someone's screen. So it sounds like if we were to talk about strategies for making competitive offers and how to prep our buyers, would that be helpful today? Okay, cool. So I think right now, the biggest thing with today's market is what we're finding is prepping our buyers from the very beginning. So from the consult on what it's like out there. So a lot of times before I do a consultation, I'll try to get them to send me like a quick overview of what they're looking for. That way I can prepare some market stats for the consultation. Because if I'm just finding, I've done consultations where I don't know what someone's looking for until I get to that meeting or Zoom call or phone call. And then I'm a little behind and I can't really prep them exactly on what's happening in the market. So I think when it comes to like guiding our buyers on how to make competitive offers, it really starts at the beginning. So starting with understanding how much inventory is out there, of the available listings, how many are under contract and how many are actually available, and sharing that with the buyers right away. Also kind of taking their temperature on what they're looking for and seeing if they could broaden their search, right? So if they want to be in the North Shore, Whitefish Bay, Shorewood, would they consider the East Side? Would they maybe consider Glendale? Similar locations, but just getting out where they maybe have more options to choose from. So I would say setting the expectations, understanding if they have any flexibility, and then giving them market stats from the beginning will help. Now it's tough because like you don't want to overwhelm them, right? Like I've literally had a buyer who only wants Whitefish Bay, 4 beds, 2 baths, Richards, right? So that's really hard because that 2-bath will kind of eliminate a lot of things in Whitefish Bay. We've found 1.5 baths, but not 2. So we have to be like really honest with them about what's available while not like totally ruining their day, right? And like keeping them encouraged. So, what I've been doing for buyers who are looking in competitive markets is talking about some of the tools that we have at our in our tool belts that we can use in an offer outside of price. So, have you guys talked a lot about those, like some ways to make your offers competitive?
Yeah,
A little bit you have?
yeah, different.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
And
Okay.
obviously, it kind of depends on the buyer's situation in terms of what you can and can't waive.
Yeah,
Right.
like we have to still protect our client and get them, make them aware of what these contingencies, how they protect them and what they're risking without them. So I guess when it comes, let's dig a little deeper, Grady, when it comes to like writing offers, like what would be the most beneficial to talk about today?
So let's say, for instance, I guess more so like down payments, separate, like different loans, I guess, in addition to the contingencies. Like, how do you make like an FHA loan look competitive in this type of market, as opposed to how do you make your bigger, not necessarily bigger, but like your higher down payments beat out the other ones that are very similar to. I guess more so strategies on like types of loans with contingencies. So like if they're able to bring the money to the table, is it worth like waiving the appraisal by 30,000 if the buyer isn't? You know, I guess that's more so my question, because when there's 53 offers or 23 offers, you're grasping at hairs, and how do you make them grasp at yours, even if it's not the highest necessarily, or the best looking loan? Like, how do
Sure.
you, yeah, more so that.
Okay. So some things that we'll do would be call the seller's agent, right? So from the very beginning, we're going to call the agent and say, what's the seller situation? Do they have somewhere to go? Do they already know where they're going? And if so, is there like a closing date lined up? What's most important to them? Because you'll see people out there that I'm sure we've all seen Facebook posts. They're like, my offer wasn't the highest, but we still got accepted. So not everyone will value price. Some people value certainty. Some people value flexibility. So outside of price, I would say let's talk about some things that, would be helpful. So if you're talking about like I have an FHA loan buyer, they can only put so much down. I would say a couple things would help with an FHA buyer. One, we might need to be looking in a lower price point than their max price point, right? So I'm chatting with buyers to say, if you can go up to 5, right now we might need to be looking more at like the 450, 475 homes to be competitive, both from a pricing standpoint and being with people of similar financing structures. So if you're looking up at your max, an FHA loan might be competing with a conventional loan. So you might want to kind of lower your down payment. I'm sorry, not lower your purchase price or where you're searching in order to be more competitive. For sure, and on an FHA loan, if you put in language that said that the buyer would take care of anything related to the FHA appraisal section, so they would be responsible for paying for a painter to come out and paint anything that's chipping on the exterior, install carbon monoxide detectors, any of those types of safety things that are generally kind of like nitpicky, but a seller often doesn't want to go through an FHA buyer because of that second round of inspection. So if you can say that the buyer would do that prior to closing at buyer's expense, that would make your offer a little bit more appealing. And it would make it kind of a little bit more like a conventional loan in terms of not having any of those requirements. So we've definitely done that. For an FHA loan too, it might be something with if the buyers can do this, because if they have a lower down payment, they might not have a ton of cash on hand. But if they were to back out of the deal for any reason, that the seller could keep their earnest money, maybe it's 2 rounds of earnest money. So maybe it's a normal round of earnest money at the beginning and like a little bit more once we're through inspection, just to like help the buyer feel stronger about their risk. I'm sorry, to help the seller feel stronger about their risk. Higher down payments definitely help. So if you have a buyer who's like, you know what, I could put 20% down, but I kind of want to, because cash is so cheap, I kind of want to just put 10. They can definitely do that, but we're recommending that they would write the offer contingent on getting the 20% down payment. Because if you can do it, don't make yourself look like you can only afford a smaller down payment. So we'd rather write the offer with the larger down payment, knowing that that buyer could get any financing they wanted, provided they felt good about it, but they could only rescind their offer based on the 20% offer or loan. So I would say that if you've got buyers who aren't sure how much they want to put down and are kind of floating, if they can put the higher amount, that's how I would write their contingency. Regarding appraisals and whether it's worth waiving, that's really going to be based on the house and the buyer. So if you're seeing under contracts and sales that are kind of supporting your price, then I feel a little bit more comfortable waiving appraisal. If my buyer is going to be there for 20 years and they have a large down payment, I feel more comfortable about them waiving an appraisal than if they're only going to be there for 2 years and are only putting 5% down. The biggest thing that we do on our team is we use something called OCR. It's options, consequences, and recommendations. And when you start using this when you're working with clients, it's really going to just change your world, because it's empowering the buyer to make a decision that's best for them. So you're giving options. All right, so you have an FHA loan. These, in a lower down payment. And I'm talking with the buyer and I'm saying, these are sometimes they're a great program for buyers, but in this competitive market, they're not always desired by sellers. So we have a couple options that we can do outside of your financing that could help make your offer a little bit more appealing to the buyers. And here are some options. So one option for that would be taking on the repairs, not asking for inspection items under a certain amount, only inspecting certain things, right? So maybe they're not waiving inspection, but you're saying we're only going to look at the basement and the roof. Whatever it may be, there's other things that you can do to make your offer appealing, and then talk about the pros and cons, and then what your recommendations might be. And you kind of empower the buyer to make a decision. The biggest thing that I've learned in this market is you can't talk about all of your tools the day you're writing an offer. They're not going to be positioned to make the best decision for themselves. So after you go through like your first set of showings, I would set the tone at your consultation that we have a couple tools that we can use as we go through and write an offer on a home. And then I always send my buyers like a blank copy of the offer after my consultation. So put that information out there in front of them. And then after your showings and during your showings, you're talking about some of the other tools that you can use. I've even had buyers, like we just schedule an appointment to talk and we walk through a couple different things. So inspections, appraisals, making up a difference, the down payment conversation, an escalation clause, contributing towards the first X amount of the inspection costs, not asking the sellers to prorate taxes. That would be a great thing for a buyer to do, especially earlier on in the year when the proration that they're getting isn't that high. Does everyone understand the tax proration concept?
Yeah.
A couple maybes. So the tax proration concept is that the seller would owe January 1st through the day prior to closing for taxes. And there are like those 4 boxes in the offer. What you can do is you can check the very last box, which has a blank line. And then you can say property taxes will not be prorated. Buyer will assume responsibility for entire year 2021 property taxes. So the benefit to the seller is they're not charged for the taxes, but it's a savings to them because on that credit that they're basically getting, they're not paying brokerage commission, and they're not paying the transfer fee. So it's like actually like a full credit that they receive. And that's something that the buyer can then just save for monthly and pay at the end of the year. If you're using that tool with a buyer who has a small down payment and like a small, not a lot of cash on hand, just make sure that they understand what the consequences are for that, meaning they'll have to come to closing probably with a little extra money because they're not being credited to start their tax escrow account. The other thing we're doing is like we're getting on the phone with our buyer and their lender and talking about how tight of a deadline we can make. That way we're all kind of working on it as a team to say, hey, you know, if they want to close in 30 days, can you close this loan in 30 days? And what do the buyers need to give you to the lender in order to close in 30 days? And so it kind of helps set the tone to know how fast I can push things, like how hard I can push financing and appraisal deadlines. Because if you have to have those contingencies, the tighter you can make them, the better. What have you guys been using to make your offer? So for those of you who have been writing offers, what have you been using and what's kind of working for your clients?
I have a question, Stephanie, about the prorating taxes.
Yep.
Would you only recommend that for the earlier months of the year? Like, don't do that in like October, just the first couple?
I would just say if you do it in October, make sure that the buyer understands and can come up with that
Can
money.
cover it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
great question. So we'll really talk to the buyer about what that means to them. So, and I'll take the tax bill from last year and then I'll kind of explain, okay, this would save you, it's really like giving the seller $3,000. And then if you do the tax proration thing, a lot of realtors don't understand it or may not automatically look for it. So when you send your offer, include that in your email. And I would literally say, like, we're not asking for the prorated taxes. The buyer will take that on. And we are factoring this as like an equivalent of $3,000 or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome.
That's new for me, at least. I don't know if other people, you know, on these calls, like I don't necessarily remember talking about that so much. I think that's a really useful tool. And then, yeah, when you send the offer, putting the highlights in and saying, we're waiving this, we're not doing that. Because really, the thing that I've been doing most is trying to waive appraisal with, you know, a cash buyer. But you can't do that with everyone. So trying to, you know, waive the tax proration is a nice new way to make our offers more attractive. That's really a good one. And the OCR too.
Yeah.
I really like that's a clear, good way to present.
And some people like, you might want to, like what I'm trying to work on is almost like a one sheet of all the different tools that we have that we've used so that we can give that to our buyers. Because some people like to like review that and digest it a little bit, talk about it amongst themselves. One conversation I've had with a buyer is the ability to get like, these were first time buyers, to get like parents' help and then to either have a larger down payment or to have them pay for it and then basically refinance post closing. So those are some options too. I mean, it's really fewer people that have that ability, but every now and then people will bring that up. With the tax proration, obviously, like for lower tax communities, like if you're in Waukesha County, it won't make so much of a difference, but I do think that every little bit will help. And for these higher price deals, that's a lot of money. It can be in like Milwaukee County. What else? So when you guys have been writing offers, have you been finding out about how many are in hand? So what types of conversations are you having with the listing agent before submitting an offer?
I like to try to do that before the showing, potentially, especially if it's in the hot area, just to set that expectation before we go into the house, because, you know, they may fall in love with that house, you know, 3 seconds in, you know, just like an instant, you know, love at first sight. but they need to have that expectation that, there already are 10 offers in hand. This is at the top of your price budget, kind of set that expectation before, they get that emotional connection. So I like to try to reach out prior, especially if it's in a like a really hot neighborhood, something that just listed, hard to get into showing time.
Perfect. Yep. Always just be checking in to understand how many are in hand, because if it's one, your strategies that you use might be different if it's 10 or 20. Know too that if you submitted an offer, you can call that agent in a couple hours and see if more have been written. And like you can go back to your buyer to let them know. So earlier this year, like the one that got away for one of my buyers is this house in Franklin, and they were so firm at their price and they didn't get it. And now it's the one that they always compare it to. So after that loss, that's when we regrouped. We met with their lender. We met to talk about these tools. But then I said to them, on a scale of like 1 to 10, with 1 being just an order taker and 10 being like giving you the most advice and consultation, where do you want me to be? Because everyone's different, right? So sometimes having these like clear talks with your buyer can be really helpful. So they said, you know what, we didn't want you to be a 10 before, but we do now. Like, you just need to tell us if you think we need to offer more. So don't it's always great to ask them more questions. So, we'll often say, if I called you tonight and you didn't get this house, would you be okay knowing that you put your best foot forward? And sometimes they'll say, no, or they'll say like, I don't want to lose this house. Or they'll say, you know what, I'd be okay if we did. And then you kind of know how to guide them, because we're going to act differently on the house that like they'd be crying about later tonight than we would if they would be like, you know what, we liked it, but we didn't love it. We might act a little differently. And using that kind of like on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, like that can help them understand how much guidance they want from you and vice versa. The other thing too is if you think your people are submitting too low of an offer, sometimes it helps to get them to write it up, to sign it. And before you deliver it, call them and say, hey, you know what? I did just speak with the agent and now there are 7 offers, not 2. Is this the offer you want to submit, or do you want to change anything? Because we're unlikely to get a counter with this many offers on hand. Sometimes getting people, and by the way, I'm not doing this to manipulate my buyers. I'm only doing this if like I think they really want it and they're telling me they do. So then I would just get them to draft it. It's a lot. Let's say the price is a $300,000 listing and they're writing at 315, but I really think they need to write at 330, right? It's harder for me to get them to go from 300 to 330 than it is for me to get them to go from 315 to 330, right? There's that mental gap that's easier to kind of surmount. And again, we're not manipulating, we're not pushing people. It's based on what they want from it, like what they want out of this home. But sometimes it's easier to just draft it, send it to them to sign, call the agent to check in, and then go back and talk to them one more time to say, hey, I just really want to make sure that this is the offer now that we know there are more in hand. I've experienced that myself, like as a buyer of something, right? Where you're like reluctant to pay a price, but then you're like, you know what, I really do want that. And then it's easier to kind of move up. So don't be afraid to change your offer or counter your offer as needed. Let's see, what else are you guys experiencing out there? For those, who's lost an offer this year? Who hasn't gotten it accepted that you've submitted? Charlie, Tom, okay. Have you reached out to the agent to kind of understand if they can give you any feedback?
Yeah, it's only happened to me once, and I just had a few text exchanges, and she said that we had a really good offer, but the other person just beat us out by cash. So
Okay. So then I think that's helpful to share with the buyer, like, listen, this was a cash offer, and that's tough to beat sometimes. But I do think getting some feedback is helpful because then it's not just us giving that information back to our buyer, but it's coming from a listing agent. So maybe they wouldn't give right to cure, or, maybe they had really low earnest money and that was nerve wracking to the seller. Being able to give that feedback is really good. And then it helps you to know where you could maybe improve or guide people in a different way.
Yeah, I've lost out. I had agent conversations with both agents both times, and basically I was told that the terms were really strong. It was a good offer, but there were just higher numbers. And basically what I had explained is that good terms isn't necessarily beating out like price. Our offer, the terms are only so strong to bring the price down so much. It's finding that balance. So knowing that, setting the expectation that we do need to write at ask or very close to ask or above ask to get something that they want.
Another conversation we're having on our team is that a list price is merely a suggestion, right? So if listing homes were an exact science, if like pricing homes were an exact science, then nothing would sell above ask or below ask, right? You wouldn't have any price reductions. You wouldn't have negotiations. So it's really sharing that with a buyer. And my coach has been saying to me, you need to ask more questions. So for example, the question he's asking me to pose to my buyers is, what is your impression of list price? Like, how do you feel about paying what people ask, right? In America, like, you pay what's on the sticker, right? But in many other countries, it's a negotiation. So try to get an understanding of that. Like, there are some people who won't pay list price or $1 above. And we kind of say to them, well, what if the price was under what it's valued at? Would you still only pay list price, right? Because has anyone seen homes right now that are underpriced? I totally have. Like, there are some homes that like the prices are just feeling too low, maybe intentionally. So try to talk to your buyers too about list price isn't always market price. So if a price is at 300, but the market shows that it should be 325, then you writing a 310 offer isn't overpriced. It's not, it's 10,000 over ask, but it's not 10,000 over the value. So I think we just have to ask more questions. Another question they suggested was, tell me, how would you explain what type of market we're in to one of your friends? And that's an interesting question, because most likely they're gonna like share their views and maybe not a friend's view, right? And so that'll kind of tap into their psyche a little bit. All right, so what else can we talk about today that would help you guys and feel like this half hour was kind of worth it? What are you struggling with?
I think another thing for me, just being so new, isn't necessarily a struggle, but like, Charlie always says that listings give out babies. Just like getting that first listing, I think would jumpstart everything.
Definitely.
So I think I have one coming soon, fingers crossed, but I'm just hopeful that once I can get that, then the ball starts rolling.
So tell us a little bit about what you're working on, this particular one, like just how it came across and how you're staying in touch.
So it was I started like a month ago basically, and a family friend's son was looking for a place, so I helped him. We're closing on the 9th on the buyer side, and he's living at his parents' condo, who now they live in California, and they were like, yeah, they heard that you were able to help me find one so quickly, they just want to list with you. So I kind of just walked into it by luck, but
Cool.
I'm meeting with him and zooming with them next week, so fingers crossed. But I'm hoping I can get that, and then, like I said, get the ball rolling.
Awesome. So, I mean, that's a great thing where just like your great service resulted in a referral, basically. So, what are you doing to prepare for next week?
I've already looked at, it's in a condo association, so just like places that have sold in the last year or so, and kind of getting a feel for prices. And then I don't know, I'm going to kind of try to start to narrow down the conversation, but I've been told they have a ton of questions to ask, so it's going to be impossible to really guess that. But then I'm bringing Martha a little on with me just to pretty much help me out too, because I'm not really going to know where to
Good.
start.
She's awesome. Yeah, like we still bring people with us on all of our CMAs. We like to go in pairs. So definitely do that. Like relax. It's helpful to have two people to kind of bounce things off of. So if you're an individual agent, you can always team up with another person to go on with that. And especially if you're newer and just want someone to kind of be able to step in as needed. So let's talk about.
Just a quick question. You just said CMA. What exactly does that stand for?
Oh, sure. So CMA is a comparable market analysis. So like Charlie was saying, you're putting together comps within the building, probably looking at comps with outside the building too, in the general market. But focusing a lot, when you're in a condo, you can focus a lot on the building itself. Yep.
So when you say you're going on a comparable market, a CMA, that means you're going to meet with the buyer and you bring along a teammate. Is that what you're saying?
Sure. So our team has like kind of weird language. So we say CMA appointment, which is basically what other people call a listing appointment. So a listing appointment is where you're going to meet with a seller to talk to them about their home, their needs, right? What's an ideal scenario for them, and and then you would bring along comparables to be able to share with them what's happening in the marketplace to help determine price. So Charlie, let's say you're gonna get the listing, right?
Obviously.
And yeah. So what are some things you can do with that listing, like as you're thinking ahead to try to get others?
Yeah, so we on our team recently really started to talk about when you have opens for newer agents, and I mean anybody, and I know they just worked with another one we had. When it goes live, we always put them live on Thursday, or usually put them live on Thursday, and then usually keep it open for the weekend for opens, but start to just send out flyers, or I know we're kind of maybe door knocking again to invite people to the opens. So just kind of get more traffic that way to then hopefully start to, get buyers off of it and just kind of market it regardless, whether you're looking for buyers or not.
Definitely. And you could even do like a neighbor only open. So like, let's say your open was like noon to 1:30, you could open at 11:30 just for the people in the condo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even like if there's an elevator, post a sign in the elevator that says like unit open 403 or whatever it is to like get people through.
Yeah.
And then what about, so you're doing kind of like just listed open house promotions. Definitely once it closes, kind of another market mailer to people to understand, what it sold for and what that success story was like.
Yeah. And then also, like I said, because being so new, I'll definitely just put it on my own social and whatnot, just to kind of promote myself at the same time.
For sure. And then it sounds like the first client that you worked with, the son had a great experience. I would try to get not a referral, a review.
Yeah, definitely.
And post that places too, or you can kind of keep like a one sheet of reviews and include in your listing and buyer consultation packets.
Yeah, just like of my own and share those. Yeah, definitely. Good idea.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. What else are people kind of working on right now?
I'm sort of in the same boat as Charlie, just maybe a little ahead. So my dad, he like on the side, he does like kitchen cabinets and other like, handiwork, if you will. And Saturday he called me. He's like, hey, this lady that I'm doing work for right now like really needs to talk to somebody about selling her house within like the next month or two. So I was just like, like kind of like stomach drop. So I was just like, took off, go over there to like check out the house, and she's really interested in working with me. So like we have like a secondary meeting, and I'm gonna talk more so not necessarily like I have the listing, but like what we would do if I did have the listing, photos, marketing, strategies as far as listing or, you know, when to go live. If she does want to, you know, maybe sign an exclusion form and try to, you know, get a analysis right now, you know, that way, as far as, you know, if there's going to be interest in the house. But yeah, just kind of lucked into it, you know, just got that call and, you know, kind of, you know, I brought the listing contract as well as the exclusion form, just kind of, you know, get her up to speed on certain things as far as what it would, not necessarily all of the language in the contract, but like keywords, you know, appraisals, inspections, things like that. And then what her needs would be after selling her house, as far as, you know, moving into a condo, you know, smaller house, you know, things like that. So kind of, you know, making another baby off of that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it's kind of, you know, start like Saturday, first met her, and then sometime this week we'll reconnect to hopefully, you know, get something signed. So.
Awesome.
But,
it's awesome when like you've got people out there who are kind of like your raving fans and can recommend you like that, and then you can just jump on it. For both of you guys, make sure that you've got follow-up scheduled in your calendar so that if you get busy, you're not forgetting, you know, about staying in touch with them. The more we can stay in touch with people, even if it's not an immediate need, they'll remember you. I went on a listing appointment like 4 years ago, and the people kind of fizzled out, but I had them on just like a drip, and they just contacted me today. Do you know what I mean? It's like so bizarre. So, you know, I don't know if something will work out, but it like if we can just stay in touch with people when the time is right, we want to be the first one they think of. And then one thing that I think we've talked about is try to make your next appointment at the one that you're on. So like Grady, for you, when you go and meet with her again, just say, all right, let's plan to follow up on X date, you know, even if it's a phone call. And then, you know, just stay in touch. The best script I learned was, let's say you follow up with her on the 15th. It's, hey, it's the 15th. I told you that I would follow up with you. Let me know if you have any questions. If I don't hear, I know you're busy. If I don't hear back from you, I'll try again on Friday. And then you're setting the tone for the, like, then you're kind of like just telling them, hey, I'm honoring my commitment versus bugging you. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm calling you on Friday again. And then you call and you're just kind of showing them that you're following up and you're honoring what you committed to doing, which I thought was cool. So 2 listings, that's awesome. So I think I'm helping Amanda when she's on vacation on the 6th. So let's check in about those and see what progress has been made. Otherwise, I think, you know, that was kind of a great conversation. I don't want to overwhelm you guys too much, but if there's anything else you want to chat about with the group, we can talk about it. Otherwise, we'll just kind of break. Good.
Cool. Thanks, Doug.
Awesome.
Thank you for filling in today. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great
thank you.
conversation. Thanks
Thank you
for
very much.
participating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Bye. You
Take
too.
care.